Hello, I'm Robin. Welcome to Bookspin. So, I just read Looking Backward, 2000 to 1887 by Edward Bellamy, published in 1888. This is a classic utopian novel. I chose to read this because I wanted a bit of a breath of fresh air from all of the grim dystopian books that I've been reading recently. So I thought this would be interesting. I picked up this copy last year. This is an ex-library copy from 1946. This book is a classic. It's got quite an important literary and political history. It's a socialist utopian novel. And I think it's an extremely visionary product of its age. It is very rhetorical in its tone. From what I've heard, it was a big hit back in its day. It's said to be one of the best-selling books of 19th century America, behind only the Bible and Uncle Tom's Cabin. And the vision that Bellamy portrayed in this book came to be pretty influential in various social movements for change. So it definitely has a historical significance, but how does it hold up as a novel? Well, for me, besides its historical and political importance, the main thing that drew my attention to this book was in its speculative elements, namely time travel, alternate history, and utopian world building. So the basic premise is quite simple. We have a protagonist who is a well-to-do young man from 1887 Boston called Julian West. And early on in the book, he undergoes a bizarre experience. So he falls into a deep mesmeric sleep, a kind of state of suspended animation. And when he wakes up, he finds himself in the year 2000. And the world has radically changed. America has become a socialist utopia. Would you believe it? So he wakes up and he finds three people who introduce him to this world, and they become his hosts. So a doctor, his wife, and his daughter. So they become his guides into the tail end of the 20th century, basically. And they explain how everything operates in this new world. And as we quickly discover, the Boston of the year 2000 is a vast contrast to the 19th century world that West has come from in pretty much every conceivable way. All of the social ills of the past have been pretty much eliminated. There's no more poverty or inequality. There's no more squalor or strife. Instead, America is now characterized by peace, prosperity, and harmony, and crime has virtually disappeared. How is this achieved? Well, basically through nationalizing industry and commerce, and creating a socialist economy in which everyone gets the same share of the national product. So this basically functions like a universal income, where everyone gets a set amount every year, which they can spend however they please. No one loses out. Everyone is happy and well cared for. Everyone has excellent working conditions. And what's more, the city of Boston is in a fantastic state. So, in some respects, it kind of reflects some of the goals of classical Marxism. Turns out, seizing the means of production wasn't such a bad idea. Now, this book goes into a lot of detail explaining just how this socio-economic system works. For the most part, this is explained through long dialogues, exceedingly long dialogues that West has with his host, Dr. Leet. And also his daughter to a lesser extent. His daughter becomes something of a love interest as well. So these dialogues, they pretty much take up the vast majority of this book. It's very discourse heavy. So this is a book that is very thin on plot or character development. All the emphasis is on the ideas, which is not always a bad thing. I can get on board with ideas-heavy novels, but in this case, the focus is all on the political and the economic ideas rather than technological or cultural ideas, which are of more interest to me. So if like me, you're coming into this as a sci-fi reader, you may be a bit disappointed. But for what it is, though, this book is basically a socialist alternate history of America, right? I suppose you could call it an alternate future, depending on which way you look at it. But it's certainly visionary, it's certainly thought-provoking. So it does have some value in that. But it's also very much a product of its time. The language feels very quaint and dated, and these dialogues do get pretty dry at times. So it's not going to appeal to everyone. Now, I will say it's not always dull and dry. There are some very vivid moments, some very vivid passages that make it worth the read, especially when Bellamy uses figurative language, right? So he manages to conjure up some really amazing and memorable metaphors that really do a great job of illustrating all of the injustices of the old world and the old world order, and how they melt away into the new world, this socialist paradise. And I should also add that the final chapter is really worth reading, even if you only read it by itself. It's incredibly poignant and memorable in a way which I didn't see coming, but I can't really discuss it in detail without spoiling it. So this book definitely has its merits. It does have some strengths as a piece of literature, okay? But overall, most of the content is pretty dry, right? So I find it quite hard to recommend this book unless you're really interested in the topic. This is obviously a very rhetorical novel. It's basically a 19th century socialist manifesto dressed up as a time travel novel, okay? The time travel element is basically a device that Bellamy just uses to bring his protagonist to the future and present this new socialist utopia to the reader. Okay, so it's no doubt a historically significant book, and it is worth reading for what it is. But as a novel, I think there are more enjoyable utopian books out there and utopian classics out there. So, for example, I'm going to take this book, Herland, which I have talked about before on this channel, but for quite a long time ago. So this is by Charlotte Perkins Gilman. It's quite a short book, as you can see. This is a feminist utopian novel that came out in 1915, and this is, in my opinion, a far more engaging and entertaining read. It's not just rhetorical or thought-provoking, but it's also very satirical and humorous, with some interesting characters to boot. So I would recommend this as an alternative utopian novel, and far more interesting to read for a 21st century reader, I think. And the other book which came to my mind when I was reading this, and I think would be interesting to compare with this book, is When the Sleeper Wakes by H.G. Wells. Okay, so I haven't actually read this book yet, but it has quite a similar premise, right? This book came out not that long after Bellamy's book, okay? And like Looking Backward, it's got a similar setup. We've got a man who falls asleep in the 19th century and wakes up 100 or 200 years later, can't remember exactly when, to a radically transformed future. Only this time this is a dystopian novel, so it's going to be very different. And Wells, of course, was also an outspoken socialist. So I think this book might make an interesting pairing with Looking Backward. I don't know. Let me know in the comments if you read this one and if you think I should give it a try. As for Looking Backward, though, as much as I can appreciate what it is, the value in its message, and its radical ideas, I don't think it holds up as a decent novel. There's just too much endless dialogue, not enough plot, not enough character development, and that limits its appeal to modern readers. So if you're going to read this book, it's best to approach it as a rhetorical socialist vision of what the world could be like, rather than as a piece of fiction. So with that in mind, I give Looking Backward 2.5 stars. Anyway, that's all for today. Thanks a lot for watching, and I'll see you again soon.